There were so many moments in Highest to Lowest that I felt like I was watching a Lifetime film. That is not a compliment for this latest movie from Spike Lee and Denzel Washington, which I went to go see this past Tuesday, the 19th. I was interested in it because it was Denzel Washington. I love Denzel. The premise looked a little interesting. And I was like, okay, let me go watch it. So I went to go watch it, but I didn't come away from it with a great appreciation for what I was watching. I'll just say that much. For starters, I think this is an A24 film, but it's also an Apple production. So it's going to be showing up on Apple TV pretty soon, probably. It's apparently a reinterpretation of Kurosawa's High and Low, which I have never seen, so I cannot compare these two. This is Spike Lee's reimagining of it, I guess, but I'm not actually a really big Spike Lee fan. To be honest, I don't care for him as a person. I feel like he's actually pretty racist, and I don't appreciate much of what I have seen him say about different things. So he's kind of already on my poop list. But Denzel, anyway, in Highest to Lowest, Denzel plays a music mogul named David King. There's a kidnapping that happens, and initially they think it is his son who's been kidnapped, but the kidnappers made a mistake and they got his son's friend instead. And the father of this boy that did end up being kidnapped was played by Jeffrey Wright. That's another reason I wanted to see this movie. I like Jeffrey Wright as well. So initially, Denzel and his wife, they were going to pay this ransom to get their son back. But then when they find out their son is okay, it sets up this sort of moral dilemma. Should he still pay the ransom? The kidnapper screwed up. It's not his son. But Jeffrey Wright's been a very loyal assistant to him for many years. He has a checkered background. He had spent some time in jail. He has been redeemed. You know, he's a productive member of society now. He's not the same person that he used to be, but he's not on up here as far as like on the same level as Denzel's character. There's no way he could ever pay this ransom. Much of the film is about, well, not much, but a good chunk of the film is about this whole moral dilemma thing. Should he pay this ransom? There's also stuff going on with his music company and legal maneuverings and buyouts and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different things going on in addition to trying to get this child back. And, well, he's a teenager, but whatever, he's still a kid. Trying to get this kid back from the kidnappers. And then there is like ransom stuff going on. And it has decent elements for a solid story. And there were some things that I did like about this film. Some of the positives were the strong family dynamic that is shown early on between Denzel, his wife, and his son. And I also like some of the humor that happens along the way. It's not really a funny movie, but there are some humorous moments. One involved Jeffrey Wright's character, and he had this gun, and he said it was his insurance, like he was Jake from State Farm. And then he had this other gun, and he called that Mayhem. And the little Easter egg to that was that the guy who plays in those Mayhem commercials was in this movie. I thought that was kind of funny. And also there's a rap battle scene that happens with Denzel's character and another character. It had some interesting energy and some tension because of what was going on in that moment, what this whole thing was about. And it was also nice to see Denzel, you know, in another leading role. But that's honestly where the positives ended for me. I felt that this movie had some tone problems. And this is why I said what I did in the very opening line of this review, feeling like I was watching a Lifetime movie. Often this sappy score music that was playing during different scenes that really undercut the tension of the moment, and it did not fit with what was going on. You know the type of sappy score I'm talking about. It's the type of stuff that you hear in Lifetime movies all the time, playing in the background when people are talking or whatever. And they would do that, and they're talking about this kidnapping and this ransom and this playing this sappy ass music. It's just like, this does not fit the situation. Just turn the score off. You should not have had this score in here. It's so distracting. And it was starting to really aggravate me. I started to get angry at the movie at that point, just because it was so constant. It was just like this, oh. And the movie's not short either, you guys. It's more than 2 hours long. So that didn't help either. That's another negative. My next one was that it's too long, and there were also some moments that felt a bit repetitive. The dilemma of the ransom, that dragged on probably a scene or two or three too long. There were repeated discussions about the same thing among different characters, and it dragged the film down. That sort of stuff was overstaying its welcome. We only needed one scene to underscore this dilemma that he was in. We didn't need this discussion repeated multiple times like what happened in the film. There were also some things off about some of the performances, and that kind of includes Denzel a little bit, but more specifically, the lady who played his wife. I don't know if I've seen her before in anything, but, when they find out their son's been kidnapped, she came across as way too stoic for a mother. And even him, he also seemed a little bit upright and tough about it. But, I could kind of buy that a little bit more because men, a lot of times, they bear the burden of a lot of stuff, and they try to put up this very strong front because, if they're the man of the household or whatever, and they have to be strong, they kind of have to hold things together. But even then, his performance felt just a little bit too removed from the urgency of the situation, and her performance as well. She was not a very convincing actor in general. She just felt like she was a pretty face there to recite lines. And I didn't buy that she was actually being this person that we were seeing on the screen. There were also other moments in here that kind of aggravated me. One was with Jeffrey Wright's character, because he had this checkered past, he kind of came under some suspicion from the cops, which is a little understandable, right? These are the things that they think about. The problem is, number one, the cops were a little bit too overtly antagonistic from the get-go towards his character. If you're suspicious of somebody, you want to kind of build this rapport and catch them off guard. And their abrasive treatment of him came across as very forced, especially when it came to the white cop's treatment, because he was just like over the top rude. And it was like, okay, this feels extremely heavy-handed and forced messaging going on here. Once again, white guy bad, that sort of nonsense, which this plays into Spike Lee's mentality that he has demonstrated over the years. So that certainly stuck out. Then there was another moment in the movie, and this has to do with when the ransom payoff is being done, and it takes place in the middle of this Puerto Rican festival that's going on. And they had Anthony Ramos and Rosie Perez in the festival thing, and like focusing on them, talking about the festival up on the stage, and all this focus on the music going on with the festival and the dancing, way too much. And then there was this piano player that came out there, and he played, and clearly he is someone in the Puerto Rican music sphere, older guy, but I started to get annoyed every time they kept showing stuff about this Puerto Rican parade going on. It was all this noise, cacophony, and focusing on that piano guy and the way he played the piano, and he would like hold his mouth open and his tongue was very prominent in his mouth, and I was getting mad at him and his tongue. And I think it was just the noise. By this point in the movie, I was getting pretty annoyed at the story in general, like the way it was constructed, because I was not expecting to dislike it as much as I was. And then other things that felt way too far-fetched, like when the money was handed off and the way that whole thing played down is just like, I can't buy into this. And then finally, when things were ended, there were multiple scenes that went on after things had kind of been wrapped up. And then the final scene is this full-on song performance by somebody. I don't even know if she's like an actual singer. She's a good singer, but there was this full performance by her, and it was just exhausting after such a long runtime. I was ready for this film to be over. And her singing, while it was great, was agitating to me by that point. It was just like, there has been too much noise, too much music, too much cacophony going on. Well, it's the same thing as noise, but whatever. It was just too much. So my overall takeaway by the time it was done was that I like the concept, but the execution was uneven and it didn't flow well. It was clunky. I feel like it would have been much stronger if they trimmed about 20 minutes off, 15 to 20 minutes at least. It would have been tighter. The tone probably would have felt a bit more smooth if they had removed much of that background score that was playing during some of the scenes that it just didn't fit at all with what was going on. There was even a scene at the beginning of the ransom handoff where the score did not match what was getting ready to happen. Stuff like that. And while there were some pretty interesting moments and good actors in here, it was just weighted down by bloat and what felt like forced themes. Unfortunately, this movie it's a misfire for me. I would slightly recommend it if you already, really like Spike Lee's stuff. If you're a Denzel fan, if you're curious about this new interpretation of Kurosawa's previous work, I'm mildly interested to check out what this was inspired by. I have a feeling it will probably be better than this, but who knows? Anyway, that's all I have to say for now about highest to lowest. As always, if you guys check this out, let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, that's it for this one. Bye.